All right, it's 12:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Spring 2021 Human Services Advocacy Network, or HSAN, where we are honored to be joined by two very special guests, the Honorable State Representative Bridget Kelly and the Honorable State Representative Scott Lips. I'm your host, Will Tarter. I'm Associate of Public Policy and External Affairs at the Center for Community Solutions. And before we get started with our program, a few housekeeping notes. There's a chat box on the right side of the Zoom host call or Zoom call. And if you have a question, please feel free to post it in the box. There will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. Also, if there's any complimentary materials or information that you'd like to put into the chat box during the presentations today, feel free to do so. Again, put your questions in the chat box. That would be greatly appreciated. The hashtag for today's event is hashtag HSAN, HSAN. The event is being recorded and will be posted at a later date. Let's take a quick look at our agenda. Again, I'm Will Tarter. I'll be opening our presentation today. I'll also be briefly touching on the policy priorities for the Center for Community Solutions. We'll then turn the floor over to State Representative Bridget Kelly. Then we'll turn it over to State Representative Scott Lips. Then around 1 o'clock, we'll have time for questions and answers. Before we get to our speakers today, and again, our hashtag is HSAN. Before we get to our speakers today, I'd like to briefly discuss the state budget priorities for the Center for Community Solutions. As you may know, this past year has been unlike any other. The COVID pandemic, the resulting economic crisis, and reckoning of deep and persistent racial disparities in state and country are what's shaping the state's 2022-2023 budget deliberations. We developed some budget priorities that are informed by this landscape and the pressing issues that should have a long-term focus and will have the focus of our organization. The first category is maternal health. We support policies that target staggering racial disparities in maternal outcomes, including insurance coverage for midwife and doula services, complete and timely data collection and reporting, and that such as maternal morbidity and pregnancy complications. And we want that to make informed policy decisions. And we also support career-long education for healthcare workers to address disparities in care. In Medicaid, we support maintaining current eligibility and benefit standards in Medicaid and make access to coverage and services more effective. This would include intentional focus on addressing the social determinants of health, particularly for children, and through the procurement of managed care. Our next category is multi-system youth. We support the recommendations of the Multi-System Youth Action Plan and current state efforts to develop a program that can provide more comprehensive care for children with complex needs, plus wraparound services for multi-system youth. For older adults, we advocate for continued and increasing funds for services, including through the Senior Community Services Funding line item. We also plan to advocate for access in nutritious food, healthcare, and broadband services to ensure that older adults are safe and supported in the settings of their choice. Finally, we improve strengthening safety net services. We want to ensure that the safety net services are responsive as possible to the needs of Ohio's families, something that is essential in the midst of current public health and economic crises. Counties need the capacity and resources to be able to process applications for programs such as the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, to ensure that families are able to meet their most immediate needs. Improving safety net services also requires timely and accessible data to identify gaps in services. If you'd like additional information on our 2022-2023 state budget priorities, I invite you to visit communitysolutions.com/budget priorities. All right, with that, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Our two speakers are State Representative Bridget Kelly, who represents District 31. Born and raised in Norwood, State Representative Bridget Kelly represents Ohio's 31st House District which includes Amberley, Clifton, Corryville, CUF, East Walnut Hills, Evanston, Madisonville, Norwood, Oakley, Silverton, St. Bernard, and parts of Avondale, Columbia Township, Hyde Park, Mount Auburn, Northside, and Walnut Hills. State Representative Kelly is a graduate of St. Ursula Academy, Xavier University, and the University of Cincinnati. She was born and raised in Norwood and served on Norwood City Council. Our other speaker today is State Representative Scott Lips, who is currently serving his third term in the Ohio House of Representatives. He represents the 62nd Ohio House District, which includes much of Warren County. A native of Southwest Ohio, Representative Lips was raised in Miamisburg, Ohio. After graduating from Miamisburg High School, Representative Lips attended the College of Worcester. After his time at Worcester, Representative Lips pursued a graduate degree and master's degree at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois, and Representative Lips currently resides in Franklin. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so stand by for one moment. Okay, Representative Kelly, you can unmute and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Will, and to Community Solutions for inviting my friend and colleague Rep. Lips and me to join you today. Every time we have to rattle off all of those 17 neighborhoods and small municipalities, it makes me wish that we had better districts. So I could say, I represent the eastern neighborhoods of Cincinnati or something of that nature. So thank you again for having us today. I will make one correction only because Representative Miranda has the privilege of representing Evendale and I have the privilege of representing Evanston. So again, thank you so much for having us today. My name is Bridget Kelly. I'm currently in my third term serving the citizens of the 31st House District and am privileged to do so. I grew up in Norwood, have spent my career working for the members of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, where I still work today in addition to my legislative responsibilities. So a lot of our work in our office is centered around economic and social justice and to the things that the folks who live in our district say are important to them. So just wanted to start us off and offer a few remarks about some budget related things. And so every budget in our office, we make a list of the things that we like and the things that we don't like. And then that helps inform us on, do we want to support this budget or not? So this time in the budget, one of the things that took a really good step forward was progress in terms of a fair school funding plan. The people who live in my district say strong public schools are something that is very important to them. And this really is a critical piece to resolving a school funding formula that has been broken and unconstitutional for decades. And really want to commend Speaker Cupp, former Representative John Patterson, and Representatives Sweeney and Callender, and as well as a whole committee of folks from all around the state who have been working tirelessly on this very complex problem in order to come up with a solution that really works for everyone. And so that where you live does not determine the quality of the schools or the quality of the education that is available to you. And we know already that there are high quality teachers in every district throughout this entire state, but we really need to take a look at this fair school funding formula so that all kids have access to a good high quality public education. Now, a couple things on my list of things that maybe we could consider looking at in separate legislation, and places where I thought we could do a little bit better on the budget are more investment in childcare. We know that access to childcare is a huge problem, both in terms of affordability as well as in terms of physical access. Folks are not working 9-to-5 jobs. Folks are often working more than one job. And it's really difficult when people aren't making enough money to make ends meet to find a significant portion of your income in order to pay for childcare so that you can continue to go to work, particularly now when there are lots of federal funds available. and we could really be bold with this. Another place that I think we could have done better on the budget is raising wages for direct care service providers. And last General Assembly, when I served on the Finance Subcommittee for Health and Human Services, I think my colleagues, including Rep. Lips, were tired of listening to me talk about this because it's something that is really important. You know, we heard employer after employer come in and say, hey, wages are a problem. We can't keep people. That's costing us money. We're getting a lot of turnover. It's disruptive to our clients. And why don't they stay even though they love this work, even though they feel passionately about this work? It's because they're not making enough money. And shame on us for not ensuring that people who are serving the people of this state, by forcing them on to assistance, by forcing them to be trapped in a cycle of poverty, we can and we should do better. The other piece of that is I do believe that these workers should be able to organize a union if they choose to. The feasibility of this, you know, depending on who you'll ask, they'll say it's not possible. It is possible. It has been done. And I think that it should be done. One of the other places that I think that the budget fell short is, you know, we were very thoughtful and careful to invest money in businesses. And while investing in our businesses, particularly our small businesses, is really important, we need to focus on investing in people and families, because people and families are what make businesses run. It's what makes communities thrive. And it's how we build an economy that works for everyone in this state. In terms of the things that we're going to be working on in our office, for the third time, we've introduced legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour in the state of Ohio. The language is similar to a ballot initiative that passed overwhelmingly in the state of Florida. We have used feedback that we've gotten in previous iterations of this bill to create a runway to better accommodate businesses. And when people have more money in their pockets, it means they have more money to spend at businesses in our community. So some folks might say that raising the minimum wage is problematic for businesses. We can't afford not to do this for businesses. Raising the minimum wage is pro-business, it's pro-worker, it's pro-community. Another thing we're going to work on, and it's actually something that Rep. Lips and I are working together in a very bipartisan way, is to ensure that people have access to their pay statements. And often when we talk about this, people can't believe that it's true that folks are not getting access to their pay stubs. You need them to pay your taxes. You need them if you want to rent an apartment, if you want to buy a car. And so we think that it is a simple common sense measure that Ohio joins the rest of 41 states who guarantee that workers have access to their own pay information. Lastly, something that we've been working on is to make sure the State House is safe, healthy, and open for everyone, to really expand what we are able to do in terms of making sure that people can offer testimony virtually. We know throughout the COVID pandemic, there have been a lot of challenges for folks who are immunocompromised themselves or might have loved ones who are, in terms of being able to come in, weigh in on the important decisions that are happening at the State House. Beyond that, we know even before COVID that it is not always easy for folks to be able to take a day off work, pay for childcare, pay for transportation, pay for parking, sit around all day and wait. And so we want to really make sure that the People's House is open to the people of Ohio. In terms of the pandemic, there were a couple things that surprised me and a couple things that really disappointed me. I mean, we have known for a long time that there are systems in this state that are failing to serve the people who need them. And I think that we are able to see that more loud and more clear, and we are able to see the disparate impact that this health crisis has had on certain communities in our state, namely Black people, brown people, poor people. And that is a huge problem, not just in this pandemic, but in terms of health access and outcomes generally. And I think that's something that we really need to be conscious of and take some very serious action in order to fix. One of the things that I was also not expecting and was a little disappointed about was the relative inability of the legislature to better adapt to what was happening around us. And that's everything from, being slow in terms of getting relief dollars out to people who really needs them, to coming up with creative ways to make sure that the State House could stay open, but so that people could also stay healthy and well. We started out well when we did a task force that met exclusively online so it could stay open to people. But I think, we started out with a bang and sort of puttered out there. But I think the lessons that we've learned from this pandemic will continue to be learned over the next year, the next decades. And hopefully we will be better able to manage a crisis situation like this. God forbid if any of us experience it again within our lifetime. So again, Will, thanks so much to you for hosting us today. It's good to be with my friend Rep Lips, and thanks to Community Solutions for having us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Representative Kelly. Really appreciate your thoughts. And now we are going to turn over to Representative Lips. If you would, go ahead and I'll spotlight you.
Great, Will, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I love the subject. I loved your review of your priorities. This is right up my alley. I love that you allowed me to go second after Representative Kelly so I can correct everything she got wrong. For those in the audience that aren't aware, Representative Kelly and I have grown very close over the last 5 years, and we're running 2 pieces of legislation together in this new GA already. So we have so much fun together that it makes legislating a lot better, because it can be a pretty rough business, and it certainly helps to have professional representatives like Representative Kelly, one of the best state reps in the House, as one of my partners. I want to start with your priorities, and then I'll get a little down to ours. You talked about dual services being significant to you and maternal health. The dual services bill that Representative Crawley has is in the Health Committee. It's on the agenda for May the 4th for its first hearing, sponsor testimony, but you're going to notice it has a PV. That's because all we're doing is we're opening the bill up, we're doing a PV, and we're referring it back to rules and reference. It will then, at that point, be referred to Families at Aging, and Representative Manchester is going to run that bill. So that was per sponsor request. So that bill will move this Tuesday. Next thing you talked about a lot was the socioeconomics of maternal health and Black babies. In HHS, Health and Human Services Committee, I had the privilege of serving with experienced representatives that really, you had West and Kelly. I mean, what a great opportunity to, we had Russo this time, didn't we? Wow, it's a step down. Sorry, downgrade. Allison is my ranking member in Health Committee, so I'll hear about that one, I guess. We found something out just to show you how dramatic the testimony was, that a white mom and a white baby in a lower socioeconomic status have far greater outcomes than high-end, high-wage earning, high socioeconomic status Black moms and Black babies. And you would think, how can that possibly be? And it shows you the dramatic changes. And sometimes it could even boil down to something like implicit bias in healthcare. So we've got to watch and understand those numbers. And I thought HHS did a good job in pulling that out. And we talked about that a lot. I hope that attention gets it programming, gets it money, and gets it in the budget. And we keep putting our resources behind that. You talked about MSY, wraparound services. I want to make sure you understand relinquishment is a big part inside that program that we started about 2 years ago under the direction of Chairman Romanchuk, the former chairman of HHS, and Governor DeWine. We've done a good job. I have to tell you that Governor DeWine cares about kids. There's just no other way to say it to you. And you understand my district, Warren County, is very different than Representative Kelly's. I get beat up a lot in my district for supporting Governor DeWine. Governor DeWine has proven time and time again to me how much he cares about children. I asked for $6 million to start the relinquishment program, and he gave us $25 million. In the very first year of that program, we have 523 children that were not relinquished, taken away from their families. If you understand how serious that is, they fought for their multi-system youth all these years, and it started to finally impact or wipe the family out financially. And we would take them, their children. So very proud of that program. 523 is not enough. There were probably 3,000 cases we should have been able to handle, but it shows you how quickly that program has grown and developed. something I'm happy about, I'm proud of. It happened as an accident. So let me just tell you, it's not because I knew what I was doing. Tara Britton, who's probably here today, started texting me about it, but in HHS, we heard testimony about adult protective services and about how the pandemic had impacted elderly people. We couldn't attract the abuse. No one was helping us, explaining to us what was happening, yet we knew the abuse was growing dramatically. Then the professional agencies should be helping us with this came in with reduced budgets or a flat budget. They said, well, our need's going to be up 25%, but our budget's flat. And that doesn't compute to me. I don't understand how that works. So I started raising hell and I put money in the budget, and lo and behold, we got it. It's like, so I want to thank Tara for her support as I started understanding the economic status of what we were going to do to our adult population, our senior population. And we were able to do some on adult daycare. Representative Kelly very astutely mentioned direct service providers, and the wages for DSPs have gone from $11 to $13.23. In the new budget, we're looking at taking that to $13.73. And she talked a lot about wages, and rightfully so. Think about this. If you are working as a DSP in a day hab center or taking care of someone in their home and you're making $13 an hour, you are responsible for their lives when you're there. You're there responsible there for bathing them. And if they're ill or have diarrhea, think about the consequences of that. If you give them medication, it has to be the right medication at the right dosage at the right time. The responsibility there is constant, and it's life or death. If you make a mistake, there are severe consequences to a human being's life. If you go to Taco Bell across the street, you can make $14 an hour. You make more. If you mess up at Taco Bell, you give somebody 2 free tacos, they drive away happy. So think about the system is wrong. We're disincentivizing people to work in one of the most significant areas that we can impact the quality of life of a human being. We have to take precedent for the disabled community. So I'm going to keep beating on that drum. I will sadly tell you that we don't get everything we want in the budget. As Representative Kelly voted no against the budget. I got enough in the budget. I felt comfortable. I voted yes, but we turned in priorities, and I had 32 amendments in the budget. I did not get my number 1 and number 2 priorities. They were both for wages in the area of disabilities and to grow that field, increase our services, but I didn't get number 1 and number 2. So I live to fight another day, I hope. So that's a little bit about your priorities that I took notes on, Will, when you were talking. So let's talk about why we wouldn't get those. I think all of us would say that's a high priority, and we have to do multi-system youth, and we have to do it at adult protective services. Representative Kelly mentioned the budget and education. It's been 20 years for Ohio to figure it out. And I'm not saying we figured it out, but I'm saying we tried. You have to take these steps. This is such a big animal and impacts so many sectors of our communities that you're never going to find a situation where everybody's happy. So let's do something. Let's make a big move like Speaker Cupp has done, and let's bite that bullet, and now we'll start fixing it. But you have to have a new jump-off point. The problem with this jump-off point is it's so large that it dwarfed our budget, and it required us to take money out of other key programs. So what does that mean? I can only tell you what it means from my perspective, and that is I heard that Senator Dolan, who is the finance chairman in the Senate, has already stated that he will be readjusting our education priority. Read the code there. I believe that means money will come out of the education program and go to Senate priorities. I want to make sure that I'm loud enough with my Senate friends that some of those priorities are your priorities. So maybe we do the education plan and it's 75% of what we hope for, but I want that 25% that comes back to us. That maybe I lost my number 1 and number 2 minutes. Maybe I can get some of my senator friends to work on that. And we've got great allies over there. Romanchuk clearly understands it. Senator Antonio, a great friend of mine, she understands this area. So I promise you that Rep. Kelly and I will watch the Senate, watch how they're changing it, and we will be the squeaky wheel trying to get some of that grease back. If they're going to put money on the table, we're going to go fight for it. I promise you that. It matters too much to us. We're both Representative Kelly and I in our 5th year, so we're not sure how many years we'll be here. But before we leave the legislature, we want to make sure that we've accomplished some of these key goals. Okay. Let me see here. Yeah, I'm sure we could have a lengthy discussion on this one. It wasn't on my list, but minimum wages, Kelly put it on my list. Yeah, let's just move on. How about that? Let's move on, Bridget. She talked about the speed of how our legislature moves. Hey, if we were a business, we'd be out of business, because businesses have to make decisions and move forward to protect their customer base. The legislature would have to move forward and to protect our citizens. And sometimes we're terrible at it. We just, we get in our own way. I'll be honest, it's very frustrating. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned becoming a legislator is that the frustration eats you alive when you see things that you know you would fix. Any one of us would sit down and fix that. And then there's real roadblocks and guardrails thrown up. I thought we fixed in this budget the nursing home industry. We were moving it back from statute. Very few states put nursing home funding in statute. It's in rule, so it can be adjusted and moved easily. But once it's in statute, it's so hard to move. But I also thought we had adjusted funding to a level where we could take some of that funding and put in companion care, kinship care, adult care, day-have services, move that funding. And it was taken out of the budget, and at the very 11th hour, I mean, at the last minute, some of our programs were reduced, and that money was put back into nursing homes, and they're going to do a thing called rebasing for nursing home funding. So education and nursing homes are taking the big piece of the budget as the two giants, and that cuts the programs that you and I and Representative Kelly care so much about. So I'm not happy with that, but that's obviously how government works and how we choose to work together sometimes. The last thing I want to talk about before I go to questions and answers with all of you is important bills in Health Committee right now. It's a critical committee, you know that. There's a HB 60, which is the autism spectrum disorder bill for marijuana. Marijuana was not included in Ohio's program for our medical marijuana program, and we think that's a mistake. So Representative Seitz and Representative Brent have introduced that bill. We've had our first round of testimony, and I'm excited to tell you that's back on the agenda for Tuesday, May the 4th. The reason, if you think it's slowed down, if you watch the timing, some of those big bills were slowed down. They've been held. It's because the budget was still in the House. We had Finance Committee, HHS. So Health Committee has been hearing more things like compact bills, not scope of practice, and not certainly something as big as a marijuana bill. So now that the budget's in the Senate, it's giving us a couple months to catch that up. And you're going to see HB 60 on the agenda this week. And I'm very excited about that. And then the last thing I want to say is a priority bill of mine. Being chair of health, I don't have a lot of time to work my own legislation. I am carrying a critical bill. It's become, I want it to be a signature piece of legislation. And I'm proud to tell you that my co-sponsor is right here, my joint sponsor right here, Representative Kelly. The name of the bill is Aaron's Law. 35 states, 37 states have passed Aaron's Law. We've tried for 5 years in Ohio, and I apologize that we've not been able to get it across the line. Aaron's Law is a law that allows us to do appropriate age-oriented education in schools about sexual abuse and sexual violence. So I think it's like grades through 1 through 7, the sexual education on abuse and what's appropriate touch, for example. And then I think it's 7 or 8 through 12, it's sexual violence. No means no would be that definition. We thought we had the bill passed last year, had tons of support, and it died in an argument between the House and the Senate. It got left on the floor. It's important to my district. You probably know that in Springboro, Ohio, 3 years ago, a first grade teacher was found to abuse 88 first grade little girls. We did not have video evidence. It was an accident. We found out. No, the kids knew they hadn't been educated on this inappropriate touch. One of the young children came home and said, "Mommy, I'm sad today." And it's like, "What's the matter?" And she said, "I didn't get to sit on the teacher's lap." And she went, "What?" I said, "Yeah, if we do something good, the teacher we'd sit on his lap." And we found there was some inappropriate touch happening. And so we put video cameras into the rooms, and we have 36 cases where we had video evidence. He was found guilty on 32 of those. But in the sheriff's investigation, there was 88 children involved. So think of the impact of those families. They all have to live with that now the rest of their lives. So I'm very proud of Representative Kelly and her work on this bill. And I'll tell you what, we're going to go down fighting. We're going to pass that bill in Ohio this year. Thank you very much for having me today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Representative Lips, and thank you to both of you for your remarks and your commentary. I really appreciate it. All right, at this time, we're going to move to questions and answers. And a reminder to our audience, if you do have any questions that you'd like to submit, please put them in the chat. Again, please put them in the chat, and then I'll go ahead and ask them. We have one question come in already, and then I also have some questions of my own that I'll weave into the program. So the first one that I'd like to ask is, how do you think the legislature will handle the American Rescue Plan dollars? If I remember correctly, it's like $5 billion to the state, and then another $5 billion to state and local governments. But I'm curious to both of you guys' thoughts on how do you believe that the legislature will prioritize and identify needs for those dollars? Representative Kelly, we'll start with you, because I think Representative Lips is addressing something.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. So I'm really excited about the American Rescue Plan because it is transformative investment in the people in our state and across this country. And I think it is really, it's bold and it's visionary. And so while we're still waiting, on some of the specifics in terms of how we might use this money, I think one of the important things that we can do as state legislators is listen to folks at the local level, talk about some of the ways that they have been impacted by COVID, and where we can make these targeted investments that can really be transformative for them. I mean, we know that people are going to continue to have problems with housing insecurity. We know that businesses are still struggling to bring people back. I did see another question in here about labor shortage, and restaurants, for example, are something that you hear about all the time because people they're not paid enough in that industry. And so I think if we can make targeted, thoughtful, well-informed investments with a lot of input from our local government partners, I think that would lay a strong foundation for how we can spend those dollars.
Thank you, Representative Kelly. Representative Lips, just to repeat the question, how do you think that the legislature will handle or prioritize the American Rescue Plan dollars? I believe we get $5 million to the state. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I have no clue. There's no talk yet because of the budget. I was so wrapped up in budget negotiations, we've not been told where that priority will be. It scares me a little because I want to know who in the House is going to have the majority say in that. I certainly want it to be people who are like-minded with the issues that we care about. I would like to see our team sit down in conference on that. I want to make sure that all of that money is not directed to one industry. I want to make sure that our industry has some of that money so we can go toward labor shortages, toward wage increases, toward benefit increases, something that makes a difference in the quality of life. I understand, and Representative Kelly just mentioned restaurants, bars and restaurants. I have bars and restaurants in our district closing because they can't hire employees now. You can't open if you don't have anyone to serve a customer, even if the customers love you and they come. Well, what do you do if there's nobody to wait on them? So I haven't, honestly, I have nothing to say except for we've not had any opportunity yet to sit down as a legislature and have those discussions. So it scares me a little. Think about that. That means, what's it mean? It means Ohio's going to be behind again, just like Representative Kelly said in our first discussion. Sometimes we don't react quick enough. We overthink things, or we sit and wait too long, and then we're behind the eight ball. And who suffers for that? Our citizens suffer for that.
Well, thank you for that. As a constituent of the state, I appreciate both you guys' commentary on that issue. All right, so the questions are really starting to come in. So I'm going to ask them as they come in. And again, I appreciate both of you. All right, so the first question that we got is, does the House Educational Plan encumber future General Assemblies? Not sure if you guys know the answer to that, but that was the first question that came in.
I believe the answer to that is no. Because I think, well, and frankly, one of the issues is whatever the House passed isn't going to matter until it gets to the Senate and gets passed through the Senate and goes to the governor. So what we're looking at now could be vastly different than what we may actually be considering in terms of a school funding formula. So I think that's one important thing to note. And certainly for the folks on this call, they know well that the way that a bill is when it is introduced can be vastly different than a bill by the time it works its way through the whole process.
Yes. Yes. So it sounds like to be determined. Yeah. Representative Lips, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll be a little political on this. It's Speaker Cupp, so it's his priority bill. So a lot of us were supportive of it, even though we may not have agreed with all of it. I mean, it's such a massive bill, probably no one agreed with it. But so the Senate has said they're going to change the plan, and I believe that means reduce funding allocated to that plan. It's a 10-year rollout. I mean, for 6 years, the first 6 years, it's still rolling out in funding. So politically, the speaker is in my caucus, so I'm going to be gentle. Is that fair? I'm going to be more honest than I should be, is that I hope the Senate does make a few financial changes, because some of that revenue can be pulled back and put to these programs appropriately that were not funded correctly. So let's make sure that we fund our other programs. I want to fix education, but it's not my highest priority. I will support the education fix, but I don't feel like it's appropriate to support it at the loss of key programs that we should be also funding.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Representative Lips. This next question is for you, Representative Lips. It says, Chairman Lips, you have been out front on pharmacy and PBM issues. Thank you for that. And ensuring patients get access to necessary medications. Are you working on anything else in this space?
Wow, a PBM question. Well, I'll speak to your group anytime now. You had me at PBM. Yeah.
We have a very engaged audience.
5 years ago, we were told that we could not fix the PBM space. As a matter of fact, the PBM took me out, patted me on the head and said, shine your light on somebody else, there's nothing to find here. And they were so powerful. I don't know, are you guys aware the PBMs have 65 hired contract lobbyists in Columbus, Ohio? 65, not nationally, in Columbus, Ohio. Are you aware that PBMs do not manufacture any product? No product. Think of in your mind when you think of a Fortune 500 or Fortune 100, big corporations, General Motors, Toyotas, they manufacture product, IBM, Xerox, right? The PBMs we have 3 PBMs that control 85% of the marketplace. All 3 are Fortune 22s. I don't know the numbers today. I think it's 7, 21, and 22. It changes because they acquire people every damn day. But think about that. 3 of the largest 22 corporations, but they don't manufacture one product. That tells you something's wrong, as the middleman has grown so large that the tail's wagging the dog. Who benefits there? The profit and shareholders for them. Who loses? Patients, because access to drugs is limited and money is so out of control that they can't afford their drugs and medication. The other big loser, independent pharmacies. We have areas where there's pharmacy deserts in Ohio now, because the PBMs underpaid the independent pharmacists, put them out of business so they could put their own pharmacy in that space. So remember, one of the problems you have is PBMs own their own pharmacy chains. CVS owns its own pharmacy chain. everybody. The only big national pharmacy chain that doesn't own a PBM is Walgreens. Everybody else owns their own. So the answer to your question is yes. I'm going to just tease you, and I'm going to tell you that next Wednesday, a bill will be dropped for a co-sponsor request. My co-sponsor or joint sponsor is Representative Thomas West, a very good friend of Representative Kelly and I's. And just as with Kelly and I, we've done a lot of bills together. Representative West and I have done 4 or 5 bills, all PBM related, obviously. So Representative West are going to back after PBMs one more time, and we'll be dropping that bill next Wednesday. So we just met on it yesterday. So stay tuned, and thank you. What a great question. I'm a happy guy now.
I appreciate it. I regret that I only saved 30 minutes for Q&A. We've got so many questions coming in. Maybe I should have allotted for some more time. All right. Representative Kelly, you had alluded to this earlier. There are divergent opinions on why there's significant labor shortage at a time when unemployment is still above 5%. Some economists believe government benefits, including stimulus and extended unemployment, keep people from entering the labor force. Others think there is no relationships. Your thoughts, and what is the solution?
Thank you for that question, and I'm not going to answer it in order, so I apologize. The solution is people need to get paid enough that they can support their families and be able to make ends meet. There are a lot of people in our community that are working full-time, that are working multiple jobs, that can't afford to pay their rent, put their gas in their car, send their kids to daycare, or pack them lunch for school. And that is a huge problem, because Ohio should be a place, and frankly, America should be a place where if you work full time and you work hard, you should be able to at least make ends meet, if not be able to get ahead. And so I think that frankly is part of the problem, is that we can't expect people to go to work and not be able to make ends meet. I think the other problem is the way that our benefits structure is set up. It is sometimes, people sometimes can lose more benefits for which they are eligible than they will make if they take a higher paying job or take a promotion. So for example, if I'm working full time and I'm eligible for benefits, like a lot of people in our community are, and I take a promotion, I may lose $500 worth of benefits, whether it's in food or rent or childcare, and I might be able to make an additional $200 a week. So at the end of the day, I'm losing $300 worth of benefits for my family. And we can't expect people to do that when it's not going to put them ahead. So I think that, as part of the pandemic, we have seen, how systems don't work and how they don't talk to one another. Because wouldn't it be nice, for example, if somebody could go to one place and say, I need unemployment, food assistance, rent assistance, childcare assistance, and have a full picture and a full understanding of all of these services that are available. But until we really think through how we take down barriers for folks to be able to succeed, then I think we continue to have this problem. And quite frankly, again, and this is a little bit of something that we might want to talk about later, when you talk about tipped industries, it creates a whole separate set of problems, because folks don't always know what they can rely on. It's subject to the whims of things both inside and outside of their control. So I think that there are things that we can do in order to incentivize work and to help people get ahead, instead of erecting additional barriers for people to be able to have a better life.
Great, thank you, Representative Kelly. Representative Lips, did you want to follow up on that?
I absolutely agree 100% that there's a massive labor shortage. There are companies, we saw one yesterday in our arena in the area of disabilities. They have 250 job openings, 265 job openings statewide. We can't fill those jobs. That's not like somebody having to wait longer in line at Taco Bell, right? They're short of help, so you have to wait 4 cars instead of 3 cars. If you're talking about in our field, that's a person at home whose independence is impacted, their quality of life is impacted, who's providing them care. When are they being bathed? When are they being transported to a job? When are they getting their medication? Is it on time? So it's a pretty big deal in our industry. I had a funny thing last night. I came home from Columbus and I stopped at my mom and dad's and had dinner. My dad's lawnmower broke down. He has about 2 acres. He's 87 years old and it's a hobby that he mows his grass, okay? But his mower's broke down. So they called someone and said, well, the mower's been repaired. We started looking for somebody to mow our grass. And they found one person. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody's working. It's hard to find people who are available. And they had a quote of $300. And the guy said, well, I'll mow it twice a week. So it's $600 a week. And mom and dad said, we'll buy a new mower. So, but yeah, it's so Representative Kelly's right. There's a massive wage shortage or a massive labor shortage, and wages are playing a key role. I'm worried though, if we raise those wages to $15 an hour by statute, remember, our field can't, Medicaid agencies can't just say, okay, $15 an hour, their wages are set. So we're going to have to do a lot of work statute wise, Ohio revised code wise. And we pointed out twice, Ohio's slow. So can you imagine if we raise everybody else's wages to 15 and we let our agencies just fall behind at 13 for 2 more years? So maybe we'll get the cart before the horse, but I bet you got 2 legislators here that don't think so.
Thank you, Representative Lips. And I'll put in a shameless plug for my colleague, Emily Campbell, who has written extensively on the benefit cliffs and how to smooth that out. So thank you to both of you for that. All right, we have a lot of questions to get to, so we're trying to get to as many as possible. All right, so what are your thoughts on House Bill 144, which would prohibit mandatory overtime for nurses? I'm not sure if you guys know about that specific piece of legislation, but that was just something that one of the audience asked about.
I am not an expert on this, but I know on this particular bill, but I know previous iterations of this have been through the legislature before. I was supportive of it then. If it's similar, I'd be supportive of it now. I mean, there are reasons why we need to give people breaks in between shifts, particularly folks who work in the medical field who always have to be, on the top of their game, providing care to folks. If people choose to take overtime, that's something different, but I don't think it's something that should be mandatory.
Okay, great. Thank you, Representative. I'm going to read some of our comments. So the proposed increase rate for adult/senior daycare is 30%. This is great. However, for an adult requiring personal care, such as feeding or toileting, this will still be about half of what this attendee would get paid to provide the same service for an adult with a DD waiver. So that was one of the comments that came in. Another says, housing is healthcare. Now more than ever, I think people understand the statement. Outside of the amazing emergency rental assistance that has come through, do you think the state will support more investment in housing stability? Do you think affordable housing development might be a good use of these rescue dollars, which are, of course, one-time spending? Your thoughts on housing?
Sorry, Lips, I'm gonna jump in line in front of you. That way you can just agree with me. So for me, I definitely think that more investments in affordable housing are important for a myriad of reasons. I think it definitely might be an appropriate use of the dollars from the feds. I think it's a problem that we are seeing certainly in my area in Cincinnati, as well as in other parts of the state. But again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. What part of the problem with affordable housing is that folks don't have jobs that pay them enough money. And so if you don't make enough money, you cannot afford to live in, you can't afford housing. And so that is a huge problem. So I do think that developing more affordable housing and thinking creatively about that would be an appropriate use of those money.
I would agree, although I have some reservations, and that is this is one-time money. Maybe it's not going to be one time. Maybe we'll be able to extend that program in the future, but we have to be cautious how we invest one-time money, that we don't set ourselves up to not be able to budget for it the second, third, or fourth years out. It'd be a great place to put some of that money. And the other thing I would say, interestingly enough, there's not a lot of talk about it in the House. I haven't heard a lot of talk about this. So for the affordable housing, there's so many other issues we've been addressing, and all of a sudden my attention got turned to adult protective services. I mean, we get pulled so many ways that I didn't have anybody pull at me on the housing insecurity. So maybe we need to champion that a little louder to get it on the radar screen. But there were so many things to put on the radar screen that shows you how important this kind of work is and why calls like this help us, because it gets stuff for us to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative. All right, this is a very near and dear question to my heart. People are struggling with mental health, from anxiety to depression to significant mental illness, and the pandemic has exacerbated that. I know that the budget has just passed, but can you tell me what type of funds are being provided to local health departments and service providers to provide this kind of care to people? And then one of the follow-up comments to that was a question about how are we reaching teens in school who are dealing with high suicide rates in their peers. So, this question is about mental health, but it applies, kind of across the board, young adults as well as older adults. Social isolation is also a high concern for our audience. So if you could both maybe talk about how we're undergirding the mental health system in Ohio.
In your statement or in your question, reading it, it said the budget has passed. It has passed out of the House first time. Remember, it's going to be sitting in the Senate for 6 weeks. Then it's going to come back to the House for a second time. So this bill will be worked. If I had to bet, you won't see a passed budget bill until July 1st, 2nd, 3rd. I hope we see it by July 3rd because I'm leaving. I'm going to be done. So I hope my vote's cast by July. So that'll be a big factor. So to answer the question is kind of tough. I can tell you that the House heard loud and clear that there was mental health issues. We had one study. I think at NAMI, I met with NAMI yesterday to show you how fresh it is that they're pushing and they're keeping it in front of us. One study said that in the pandemic, household surveys, just take 10 average households, 8 of those households had to deal with mental health issues. So if you want to talk about how the pandemic has really impacted us, this is probably the #1 area. And I believe that we're not prepared for it. We're not prepared for it from a facility perspective, and we're not prepared for it from a money perspective. So I can't give you specifics on what got into the budget. I can tell you it was a high priority. We talked about it, but you're probably not going to know that answer for 3 months.
And I'll add to that. One of I think the provisions of the budget that I think is problematic for local health departments and their ability to assist people in their areas is a provision that I believe is meant to encourage consolidation of local health departments in small communities. And part of the problem with that is a lot of these smaller local health departments serve folks who don't necessarily have access to these types of care in other places. And so if we are in fact encouraging them to merge, consolidate, move, etc., then my concern is that it really creates an additional barrier for folks to be able to get this care that they need and that they deserve.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to read just a couple of comments that have come in, and then we'll get to a couple more questions because we're running really short on time. One of the comments, Representative Lips, you mentioned the $2 per hour increase in wages for DSP statewide, the increased reimbursement from the state/Department of Development of Disabilities was specific to homemaker personal care. For providers of adult day services, we got no increase in rates, yet have had to raise wages anyway to remain competitive with no offset in fees. The 1.8% increase for ADS in the budget is inadequate. That was one comment that came in. I don't know if you wanted to respond to that.
It's absolutely true. We had $270 million in the previous budget for DSPs and wages. The problem is with some legislation, there's unintended consequences. And we actually created a new barrier for day hab facilities and adult day care direct service support providers. We increased the wages for everyone else in the field, and that category got left behind. Certainly was unintended. I don't know that we got the funding because there's already $270 million that we got approved. So to fix that this time, we put in amendments. One was for 70 million. We had to reduce it for 30 million to try to just fix that specific area. And that was taken out of the budget. So I submitted it. Not enough people supported it, or at least not the correct people that supported it. So yes, that is a true statement. We are fully aware of it in the House. And we know that that's an area we're working very closely with Director Davis over at DD. Everybody knows about it. So we're going to find a way to fix it, even if it has to be some additional legislation outside the budget.
Okay. Representative Kelly, did you want to follow up on that? Or we can jump to the next question. Okay. Speaking of local health departments, there has been discussion at local agency meetings that there are plans to eliminate local city health departments. During COVID-19, it is obvious how impactful local health departments have been. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I would say again that, a lot of these agencies, I should say, a lot of these local health departments are the places that people rely on for treatment of all sorts. And so I think we need to be really careful and really thoughtful, and that there need to be more conversations with stakeholders and communities and leaders and experts to figure out what the potential loss would be for the communities.
I'm brutally honest here, guys. You're all in the areas that I care about and I try so hard to work for. This was not a universal idea. This is not something the people who work in health, our health committee, we have a very strong health committee, both sides, Democrat, Republican. We have great benches. It's the best health committee we've had in a few years. This wasn't our idea. This was one individual who somehow got upset with the health department. I don't know the background. And all of a sudden, there's all this talk of why are there 80 or 90 or 100 health departments when there's 88 counties, and why shouldn't we consolidate? And these small counties have one for every 4 counties. This was one individual. So it shows you the impact when you get a state representative who chomps onto something or locks onto something. So I'm not sure that's going to stay. So let's not be overly upset yet, and see how the Senate addresses that. Okay, so it didn't have bipartisan support. It didn't have strong caucus support. On my side, it had one individual kind of leading that parade. So let's just, we know that probably needs vetted more.
Great, thank you. This was another statement that came in. We're grateful for Governor DeWine's focus on children and are encouraged by the development of Ohio Rise. Thank you for your leadership and advocating for multi-system involved youth. We know this effort will improve outcomes for kids and families, saving tremendous financial and human costs. Okay, so we're clearly not going to be able to get to all the questions that have come in. We have some amazing questions that have come in and some really great comments too. A commenter said that they love the bipartisan spirit on this. Another said great content, thank you. So I want to thank both of you. I want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. One of the comments, Representative Lips, was about your shirt, about the Ohio flag shirt. I know we talked about that earlier. And then Representative Kelly, you got to tell me where you got that Ohio sign too, because I love that as well on the wall. So Representative Lifts, you go first, and then Representative Kelly, I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on displaying Ohio pride here.
First of all, thank you for having us. It was exciting to see that I had the opportunity to do this, not only about issues I care about, but with Representative Kelly, who is a champion at this. And it's just fun to have her in the legislature and see the impact that she makes. So the Ohio shirt, I said, if you'd have had me on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, I'd have wore a tie. But you got me on a Friday. I was mowing grass. I don't know what you expect of me here. My grass is a foot tall, so no tie, but look at that. Always represent. So State House Museum gift shop on sale for $20. Long sleeve.
Awesome. In Cleveland, that will come in handy too. So I appreciate the long sleeve aspect of it. Awesome. Representative Kelly?
I feel like I should have gotten some Wonder Woman swag out, Lips, and we could have at least coordinated a little bit better. No, Will, I want to say thank you so much to you and Community Solutions for having us. And again, it's really a pleasure to be here with my friend Rep Lips. You know, I think while there are a lot of challenges at the State House, I think one of the most happily surprising things for me has been to find some really great people and some really wonderful lifelong friends. Sorry, Lips, that means you. I will say, so this Ohio I got as a gift, but it's actually all of the state roads in Ohio, the main state roads, highways, state routes, etc. And Matt Bruning, who is the communications spokesperson for ODOT, also has the same one. So I feel like I'm always channeling my inner Matt Bruning whenever we use this vantage point for Zoom.
That's awesome. Well, you know, I just wrote a piece on public transportation, the transportation budget. So that is near and dear to my heart as well. So I want to thank both of you for coming on here today.
Can I
Representative Lips?
comment, Will?
Please go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I want you to understand that if you look at Representative Kelly and I on paper, and you look at our districts, we don't look alike. Our districts aren't alike. And I think people think we're not going to work together. And yet we have forged this relationship that has made a difference for Ohioans, particularly since it's our area, disabled Ohioans, socioeconomic challenged Ohioans, and Ohioans who face bias every day. We've been able to bridge that. Now, does that mean we agree? And no, think of there 2 or 3 key issues that we can't talk about. We end up and just go, okay, fine. But you know what we do? That's what we say. We say, fine, now what can we fix together? So if you put 10 issues in front of us, 3 of them we can't work together on. But we can't allow that. If you're so small and you allow that to limit what you are going to accomplish together, you're not going to get anything done, and Ohio is going to stall. So we have found a way to go way past it. So did Representative West. He's been wonderful in how we've accomplished this together. So that's where Bridget shows you she's one of the best state reps in the State House.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative. And it's so interesting because one of the closing comments in the chat box was thank you to you both for your bipartisan work. Please keep this up. So I think that this is a perfect example of that. And I really appreciate both of you taking the time to join us. And I hope that our audience enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. This was a fantastic conversation. Representative Kelly, thank you to you for joining us. Thank you for all of your work and your advocacy. In particular, the virtual public comment, I'm like, thank you. So thank you for that. Representative Lips, thank you for joining us. And you know, Adult Protective Services near my heart. So I appreciate you, your work on that as well. So thank you to both of you for joining us. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us on this Friday. Have a great weekend. Stay tuned for the next Human Services Advocacy Network event. Our forum is now adjourned.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.